Good afternoon. Welcome to the White House. And for those of you viewing online, welcome. My name is Aaron Hannigan, and I work here in the Office of Public Engagement at the White House. And I wanted to be the first to welcome you all, and especially thank our champions of change who are here to honor today. If you want to give them a round of applause before we get started. We're looking forward to a great event with our champions here today, and I would encourage everyone to learn more about their stories by going to www.whitehouse.gov/champions. Now, before we begin our discussion with our champions, we have some special guests. First is my colleague here in the Office of Public Engagement, Heather Foster. Heather?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the White House. This is a wonderful event that we have here today to highlight people doing fantastic work in the community. These are champs that were nominated by a host of people locally here in D.C. and then across the country as folks that are identified to do great work. And today, in honor of the Martin Luther King holiday that is quickly approaching us this next Monday, we've selected 8 individuals who are doing great work in their community around providing economic development opportunities for people and also just bringing great community service to the community. So I want to take the time out today to just really talk about how we look at the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. My job here at the White House is, as the Associate Director in the Office of Public Engagement, is to do outreach to the African American community. We do a host full of events all the time, and that's why today is a fantastic opportunity in terms of the fact that we're doing our Champions of Change connected with the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. So I want to thank you all for coming here today, traveling here, and I want to thank you all here in the audience for taking time out of your schedule to really honor these individuals. The life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is something so important to remember. He was his own champion of change. He had a vision, he created it, he dreamed about it, and then he actually took to the streets. Martin Luther King Jr. to me a lot of times was just the, I guess would say, embodiment of a servant. And he had his message and he had his dream. And I think all the people on this stage, they are also servants. They go into the community, they see what's needed, and they work to build a greater community. And that's what Dr. King dreamed about. So I want to thank you again for coming out. I'm going to take the opportunity now to introduce a Deputy Assistant to the President and Counselor to Senior Advisor Valerie Jarrett, Mr. Michael Stratmanis.
Thank you, Heather. Isn't Heather doing a great job? Let's give her another round of applause. One of the great things about having done this work on behalf of the President since he began his public career, working for him in the U.S. Senate, working on a few campaigns, and having the privilege of working here at the White House is I've been able to be a part of something very special. There are many pieces to it, but one of them is that there is really a generation of Americans who have stepped forward to serve their country in so many different ways. I've had a chance to work with so many of them here at the White House. I'm incredibly proud of them, and you should be too. They are operating and working in the best spirit of public service, consistent with all of those who have come before us, and all of you who are doing your own part, your own work, have done it in some cases before we got here. We'll be doing it, I believe, after our time here is over. We're partners, us in the federal government and the White House, you and your community. And so being a partner, I know how much work you have on your plate. I know how hard it is. There's a lot of need out there, and those who are trying to serve others have a full-time job in today's economy and in today's environment. And so I really want to thank you, first of all, for taking the time out of your schedule to come here and join us. It means a lot to have you here. This is a very special event for all of us, a very special occasion for all of us. So I am going to, when we're done here, I'm going to run across the street and go and tell the President all about today, all about these champions of change, and he will be proud. He'll be proud, first of all, because this is what we should be doing. As for those of you who saw him speak on the Mall recently, at the dedication of the new memorial to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. You saw and heard in the president's voice and in his words how he really is trying to do everything he can, his ability, with the great privilege that he's been given to lead this country, to follow in the footsteps and to continue to create the beloved community that Dr. King set forth for all of us as a standard. And so he's going to be excited about that, but he's also going to be excited that we are focusing on people who are working in their community every single day. You know, that's how he got started in public service on the south side of Chicago, working with churches and community organizations trying to help people. So I'm really thrilled to be able to have this opportunity. So now I want to take the spotlight off of those in public office, and I want to put the spotlight on those champions who have joined us here today. I'm going to just let you know who's in front of you. I'm going to take a little time to do this, but I want you all to know the work that these folks have done. James Bailey. James Bailey serves as the Market Vice President for the Southeast region of Operation Hope, a global nonprofit public benefit organization. It is also this country's leading provider of economic tools, services, and financial dignity for the underserved. Todd Bernstein. Todd is the president of Global Citizen and the founder and director of the Greater Philadelphia Martin Luther King Day of Service, which is the largest King Day event in the nation. Next week, more than 85,000 volunteers will serve in some 1,300 projects in the Philadelphia area. David Brown. David Brown is the vice president of United Healthcare. I hope you guys are smiling or raising your hand or something when I talk about you. And has been a minority business owner for 20 years, where he has employed dozens of individuals from underrepresented communities, provided internships to students of color, and made contracting opportunities available to other disadvantaged businesses. Edwin Pfizer. Edwin has been a senior companion with the Suburban Cook County Senior Companion Program for over 3 years, where he helps with the needs of the frail elderly. Mr. Pfizer, am I getting that name right? Yes. All right. Mr. Pfizer also serves on the Senior Citizen Board in Park Forest, Illinois, and the Montford Point Marines Advisory Board. Genovie Eugene Ford. Am I good? Giovanni Eugene Ford. You got like Strautmanis. You think you pay attention to the names, right? Giovanni Eugene Ford has worked in the field of early childhood care and education for the past 28 years and is currently the founder and executive director of the Network for the Development of Children of African Descent, a nonprofit family education center focused on education and community revitalization in communities of African descent. Stephen Powell, the executive director at Mentoring USA, where he is focused on program expansion and technical assistance efforts for mentoring programs across the nation in many major cities. Maureen Roach serves as the director of the Campus Kitchens Project, which in the last 10 years has recovered more than 2 million pounds of food, engaged 45,000 student volunteers, and has reinvested millions into the communities where they serve. And Rachel Turner. Rachel is the Outreach and Programs Manager at Global Citizen, where she manages the outreach and registration process for the thousands of volunteers who work on the King Day of Service event. She's also an alum of the AmeriCorps program. Let's give our champions a round of applause. So, we're going to get started? Let's get started with our panel. Let's get into this discussion and have this conversation. You guys are going to have to scoot over a bit. Give me some room here. I'm a big guy. I've lost a little weight. The first lady's mentioned it to me, believe me, but I haven't lost that much. Giovanni. You know, I just have to say before we get into our panel, you know, sometimes we work here at the White House, you get a little bit caught up in the day-to-day. And it's really moments like this which gives me an opportunity to remember why I'm here, why I got into this work in the first place, the values that were passed on to me by those who raised me. And so I just want to thank those of you who took the time to come and join us today. You know, in so many ways, you're giving so much more to us in this event than we could ever get from you, give you. So thank you. Giovanni, you focused your career on education and early childhood care, including the founding of your nonprofit. Expand a little bit for us on why you created your organization and, frankly, how you've been able to make it so successful. How does the Dr. King's legacy really guide you in the work that you do every day?
Well, first let me just say what an honor. I'm full. My heart is full. It is such an honor to be here, representing and receiving this recognition on behalf of so many. Dr. King, W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. Asa Hilliard. Our organization, the vision for our organization really is a culmination of a host of folks that came together over years to have conversations about what our children need and what's our role in the education and socialization of African children. The community, as I said over years, said, you know, we need to commit ourselves to really examining how do we build an institution where we can provide a cultural education for our children, recognizing that our children's cultural education provides the foundation for their academic success and lifelong learning. And so this vision really didn't come from me. I'm a servant. My role has been to hold on to the community vision, to remind us the vision that we articulated, and to keep us moving in the right direction. So again, I'm just honored to be here. We've learned so much about how to support our children and families in their cultural education and their academic success. Much of our work focuses on literacy and the development of literacy skills for children and families. And through our various programs, we continue to see that our children step to the plate when they understand that reading is about knowledge of self. Then they self-motivate to master the academic skills, and that shows up in all areas of their life. So again, I'm just so honored to be here on behalf of so many that came before me and those that are involved in this work.
Well, let's pick up on that thread, talking about the way you sort of reached out to reach and touch people in your community. And David, I'm going to expand a little bit on your roles. You wear about 8 hats in Philly, so I'm going to talk about them. 1, you're a business owner. 2, you're the general manager for Pennsylvania's only black-owned radio station. I've actually been on that station. You're a pastor in the United Methodist Church, and you're now top executive at a healthcare company. One of the things that you've been able to do with all those hats on from that perch is you've really been able to reach out and connect with those in the community who are underserved and underrepresented, bring their voices into those different discussions. A lot of people try to do that, but aren't always successful at actually connecting and reaching people in the community. Tell us how you've been able to do that, and give us some advice. Give us some advice on those who want to do the same.
Well, I think that, and again, I share Genevieve's. Giovanni, because I said that before, your sentiment about being honored to be here. And I think that I can probably sum it up best when someone told me that no voice is distinctive until it's heard. And I think that somehow we have to find ways to get those voices that aren't heard out, whether it's through education of self, being able to know who you are and be able to have that level of articulation, but also to be able to articulate those needs and fill some of those needs. So whether it's being a pastor or running a radio station or working in healthcare, running an ad agency, I see them all converging around communications, being able to communicate, being able to put things forth. And I see one thing that Dr. King, I think, was masterful around is being able to capture that message and get it out and motivate people. I think a lot of times there are a lot of people who suffer in silence and who may never get the opportunity to articulate what's going on in their lives. And I think that I would call myself a serial entrepreneur. I'm always trying to do something. And I think all of us, and the folks that you'll hear from this morning, this afternoon, you find a need and you go fill it. Not because you're being an opportunistic in terms of your path, but you see something that you can give to it. And if you can give something to it, then you almost have an obligation to be able to fulfill that. And I think a lot of times, particularly a lot of people that we work with in the community who may not think they have the ability to fulfill that need, kind of serving a victim role as opposed to being a victor. And I think that a lot of times we have to find tools to make sure that they're able to do that, whether it's a radio station, whether that's through their faith, certainly through their jobs, and particularly as United Healthcare, through their health. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And being able to recognize that that health enables you to have a strength of voice. So one without the other really is a disconnect. And I think that that's part of what we must be able to do in terms of fulfilling Dr. King's mission and vision for being able to have the voice that goes unheard, but being able to give strength to that voice.
That's good advice, particularly from someone who's been so successful as you have in executing on that vision. I appreciate that. I want to change gears briefly because I want to lift up something that, one of the reasons why I'm here is I found a mentor early on in life. When I was trying to figure out what I was going to do as a career, I talked my way into a job at a law firm in Chicago and met a young lawyer named Michelle Robinson, who introduced me to her husband, this guy who became president of the United States, her fiance at the time, actually. And I work every day with Valerie Jarrett, who served as a mentor to the First Lady and the President as well at different stages in their life. And so I wouldn't be here if it weren't for mentors. Mentoring is such an important part of people's experience, and when you're talking about really reaching out and making sure that we are successful as a community, mentoring is a huge part of it. So Stephen, you're the executive director of Mentoring USA. So you help others develop mentoring programs every single day. Explain to us a little bit from your vision about how important mentoring is, and really explain. I use this phrase over and over again. I get it from the president because he talks about it in meetings, in the spotlight, and when no one, when the spotlight's not there, about the beloved community. Explain to us about mentoring and how it can help create Dr. King's vision of that community.
Okay, well, first I just want to thank the White House for this very esteemed honor. When I think about mentoring and my commitment to this, I really can't look at it as just being the executive director of Mentoring USA. I actually look at mentoring as my ministry. When you think about the way that Martin Luther King operated, he operated from a standpoint of faith. This morning as I was thinking about this tremendous opportunity, I actually went down to the King Memorial just to reflect. And there were certain words that just jumped out to me. The measurement of a man. So taking this moment, looking at on this stage, African-American men aligned who've committed themselves to community. The other words that jumped out to me were make a career in humanity. What does that really mean, to make a career in humanity? The beauty of Dr. Martin Luther King was the fact that wherever he put his feet, that became his community. Mentoring is really a new terminology. When I think back to my life, I lost my father at the age of 5. I was raised by a single mother. But the people who stood up for me, never called themselves mentors. They just did what they were supposed to do. And so my job is to simply inspire. We partner with schools, corporations, community centers, faith-based institutions. The faith-based institution is so critical in this work, where corporations have been so incredibly supportive of our work. We have to be able to train those that are entrenched in the community to make mentoring embedded into the fabric of our society, that we don't even look at it as mentoring. Because when you just look at it as mentoring, when the funding goes, the program goes, and children are hurt. So understanding that communities are hurting, we have to understand that the work that we're doing is a part of a healing process. The spirit of collaboration is all about this work. We cannot do anything alone. So trust and collaboration, allowing faith to drive you. I'm simply a vessel. If I allow God to move, I don't ask him how or why, I ask him when and where.
I appreciate that. Some of these comments, I just feel like we should just end it right there. Appreciate everybody coming today. Thank you very much. So thank you for offering that spirit and putting that spirit into our work here today. I'm going to just shift gears again because there's really not much more that can be said about mentoring than that. And I want to talk a little bit about providing economic opportunity for everyone. There's obviously a role there for the federal government, and it's something that we have attempted, at least in our way, to fill that role. But James is the market vice president at Operation Hope, and frankly, this is an organization through James and his leadership and the rest of the members there that have done an amazing job in creating real opportunities for those who are underserved and economic opportunities. So, James, talk a little bit about how, tell us about the programs. Just give us a little bit of an information session about the programs that are offered by Operation Hope, because they provide such a crucial service to the communities in which you serve. Just inform us a little bit about the programs that are out there so that we can know what to plug into.
Sure. And of course, you guys are amazing. So this is great. If we look at Dr. King's legacy and his last great battle before he was assassinated, he waged a poor people's campaign. Operation Hope, we've been around for 20 years. We've served over 1.5 million people. We operate in 52 countries all over the world. But our key motivation is financial dignity and economic empowerment. If we're looking at over 40 years ago, Dr. King recognized that there was a problem. There was disparity with economics, there was disparity with housing, but some startling statistics, even if you look at today, there's 17 million individuals without a checking account. Of that, there are 22% of black households in America don't have bank accounts. 21.3% of Latino households. And this is in 2011. And if individuals don't have the basic access to the most basic economic tools and services, essentially we're looking at another stage of what we could consider economic slavery. So with Operation Hope, we work daily. We have over 16,000 volunteers in the U.S. alone, providing services like home ownership. We're looking at fixing credit scores. If you want to start a business, how do you go from zero, from a business dreamer to a business owner? And we provide all of our services for free. And with that, we've shifted from the term financial literacy to financial dignity. Because what does financial literacy mean to anyone? But that feeling from a single mother of two, when she went from no hope to owning her first home, and from owning her first home to being a stakeholder in her community. Now she's a better parent at school. She feels empowered. That's not just about the mortgage that she acquired. That's about a feeling of dignity that's been instilled in her. And that's why we've made the switch. Our work is to ensure the communities, we reinsert dignity into these communities through economic empowerment. Financial literacy is the tool, dignity is the goal.
I appreciate that. Stephen, you offered a little bit of your personal story, which I thought was very compelling. And I think, sometimes through personal stories, through narratives, we can make a little bit more of a personal connection, and people can see that pathway for themselves and in the work that you all have done. So, David, I'm going to put you on the spot because I get to do that because I'm the moderator. When you thought about Dr. King's legacy, you being selected as a champion of change, tell us about any of what personal experiences come to mind that really led you and motivated you through your career, really, of service?
Well, I thank you for that question. I know exactly. I can remember the night that it happened. I was a survivor of a drive-by that didn't go as that the person intended. I happened to be standing on a street corner with a bunch of my friends, just hanging out, not doing much, and something happened that someone thought that I had done, and it was turned out that I was not the intended target, but I would have been the victim. And it scared me right off the streets. I'll never forget it. I came from a very stable home and was just not doing anything wrong, but just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And then I thought I did not want to be a statistic. And there are so many young people, particularly young black men and boys who are out there who have such talent, such creativity. That motivated me to get off the streets, to return to my writing. That's what I used to always love to write, and I realized that God had a bigger purpose for me, and that has motivated me since I was a teenager. And I think that, unfortunately, we don't always affirm some of the creativity in some of our communities. We just need to give them a shot, give them a chance to be able to have that creativity manifest itself and find pathways. And you've heard that theme, whether it's a mentor, whether it's an economic opportunity, whether it's being able to know who you are in terms of your culture, myself in terms of their faith and their health. Sometimes that's all it takes. Once you get that motivation, and I'm so glad that God had a bigger plan. He needed me to be on that street corner at that time, so that drive-by could go that wrong, so I can do right.
Right. That was a great story. I'm glad I asked. Giovanni, give us some tips for success. You've been able to, chart a path that not many have charted. It's founded a nonprofit, a successful nonprofit, which is, something to, not something to sneeze at in this environment that we're in, serving a need. Give us some tips for success. How'd you do it, and what kind of lessons did you learn through that process that you could pass on to others that want to serve in an institutional capacity the same as you have?
Well, a couple of key lessons, the first of which is to honor our elders, those who have so much wisdom, who have been down the pathways, who have forged the pathways, who have started and have continued the work. So a lot of our success, the reason that we're still here is we developed very close working relationships with elders in our community who have provided the counsel, who have really provided my overall education. Because in the work that we do, there are certainly policy implications, whether we're talking about education or child welfare, across the modalities, many policies. But our elders, they know that terrain, unlike I do, right? My background is childcare, early childhood, child development. I know how to work with children. Had it not been for the elders who understand the context that we live in, my education would have fallen short. So connection with elders and tapping that knowledge has been critical. The second kind of key learning is to not be discouraged when our people don't look like we're engaged, right? So I can recount numerous trainings, workshops that we've done, parent engagement activities, and the one or two showed up when 100 said they were coming, right? And I've worked with my staff over time to help them understand something that my father and elders have taught me. Don't look at the numbers. Those who are meant to be there will be there for the ordained purpose of being there. And so we have learned that it is a part of our responsibility to keep creating opportunities for our people to be engaged in the work of community building, to keep creating opportunities for parents to be engaged in the cultural education of their children and the academic success of their children. So those are two of the key lessons, the elders and this just keep on keeping on.
Right.
And don't look at the numbers. My father used to say, don't look at the faces, right? Don't look at the faces. Faces sometimes will take you down the wrong path, but follow your spirit and follow truth. Do what is right.
Well, that leads me to another question that I want to send to James. In order to keep that doggedness, sometimes motivation is a factor. People are motivated by a lot of things. Obviously, people are motivated by economic opportunity. But sometimes in this work, when you're serving, the economic opportunity isn't there for yourself. Sometimes, as you just spoke about, there can be a lot of perceived failure from your own perception, but also from the perception of others who may not understand why you're doing what you're doing. People who could be in your life, who you would want to normally look to as a support network, don't really understand why you're fighting the battle that you're fighting, serving in the way that you're serving. James, tell us what's motivated you. What's kept you strong? Give us some perspective, because I know others here might be in the same position either now or if they aren't, they will find themselves in the same position someday as long as they keep on staying on this side.
Sure. I guess there are three things that come to mind. One is a saying that people say all the time, that success is measured by going from failure to failure without losing enthusiasm. And there's a stick-to-itiveness that people that lead, that they share. I think that one of the things that motivates me most is I have an incredible foundation. You know, I can look in the audience and I see part of it out there. It's family, it's rooted, but also loss breeds leaders, in my opinion. And I steal that from one of my mentors, John Hope Bryant, the founder of my organization. But it's one's ability to mitigate pain and manage pain. So if you think about the people who've changed the world, nobody opens a cancer center just because. It's because their life has been impacted by cancer, and that's at the root of their motivation. Nobody opens an AIDS clinic just because it's the right thing to do. Their life has been impacted and affected by AIDS. I think in my story, in my life story, I've seen enough loss, and I've seen enough pain, managed enough pain, to where I want to go out every day to ensure that people's lives are better. And I think that the internal motivation comes from your life story. And if you haven't had that opportunity to truly manage pain, you can't go forward. You can't go forward with passion, because there has to be a route to that where you say, I'll never go back there again. As you talked about that drive-by, that was enough. When those hot bullets were passing by your head, you said, well, you know what, I managed enough pain here. Let me move beyond it.
I appreciate that. I think all of us would love to have any one of the people up here on stage as a mentor. I think all of us have had opportunities in our lives to mentor others. But some of us, mentoring is one of those things that, in my experience, everyone thinks it's intuitive, but there may be, like a lot of things that seem intuitive, there may be a right way to do it and a way to do it towards being successful. And there may be some things that may seem intuitive that may not be the most positive or impactful way to go about it. Why don't you give us some advice on being a mentor? If we want to go out and step into that, what are ways that we can do that and be successful? Everybody's busier than they ever were. Everybody's got more on them than they ever did. Give us some pathways to success and mentorship.
Sure. I think one of the first things is to manage your own expectation. A lot of times mentors come into an organization with a cape, thinking they're going to change someone. And sometimes change takes time. What I can recall from the mentors who were very valuable in my life, there were three very important things that I was told. Have a goal, keep the right company that's going to be able to impact that goal, and to be very mindful of your consequences to your actions. When you think about those three things, they affect every single level of your life, whether you're in elementary school, high school, college, the workplace. Most of our young people don't have a goal. There's no one showing them what they can or cannot become. If you have a person showing you where you can go, and then you now have the supportive structure to get you to that point. When I think about the framework of our program, we focus on financial literacy, healthy lifestyles and self-esteem, diversity and tolerance, bullyism, media literacy. All of these things are not only impactful on the child, but they also impact the family. It's one thing to tell a child, okay, you know what, we want you to eat healthy, but who's purchasing the food? Mentoring starts in the home. I mean, that's really the lesson, being an active listener, being patient, understanding that it's not about, and I can be very honest. I can think about some of my friends. They're very unhappy in their careers because they're not living their own dreams. They're living their parents' dreams. You have to figure out what a child wants to become and then be the wind beneath their wings. That's essentially what a mentor is. You're a positive opportunity broker. And when I think about young men in certain communities that are struggling, they're struggling because we're just not present. So essentially across the landscape of America, we're losing the recruitment war because kids are being mentored. They're just being mentored negatively.
I appreciate that. One of the lessons that has been really pressed upon me And it's obvious when you think about the legacy and the work of Dr. King is the role of the faith community. You know, you think about all the issues that we're working on here in the federal government, the issues that Stephen just ran through, but, you know, whether it's education, healthcare, economic opportunity, and the like, there's so many of them. They're things that the federal government can't do alone. And there are cultural things that you just spoke of as well that, frankly, the federal government can do very little to impact. And one of the things that we've wanted to do is to partner with the nonprofit community, partner with the faith-based community in order to make sure that we're having maximum impact. David, you're a minister. You're a pastor. Tell us how you think, from your perspective, our faith-based institutions can effectively partner with all sectors, the business sector, the nonprofit sector, and the public sector, to make an impact on service and make an impact on creating the beloved community that we're speaking so much about today.
Absolutely. I think that one key is making the church relevant again. I think there's so many churches. At one time, I mean, I know when I was growing up, church was the center of my life, my community, and everything else. A lot of things happened there, moved there, and so forth. But even some of the kids that we've all been talking about, Stephen just alluded to it, they have a different reality. We're talking about generations of kids who don't have a real faith direction in their lives. And I think that, to your point, Michael, I think that being able to have the faith-based community is learning its new reality. And it doesn't happen overnight. I think the church of 2012 is different from the church of the 1960s, 70s, and probably 80s. And it's going to take one church at a time. I'm so blessed to work in a church. My church is in West Philadelphia. It's a tough part of town, but we're learning how to be more relevant in our community. Too often we have churches that the folks who are there came there, parked there, but they live somewhere else. And they have a sanctuary, but it's more of a club as opposed to an active catalyst. You know, and I think that part of what has to happen, and I'm blessed to be one of those pastors who works both outside the community and inside the community, because one without the other is really not going to have the right connection. So to answer your question, I think the way that the faith-based community can remain engaged is that it has to become and always be a dynamic institution, has to always remain relevant, has to think beyond its walls, be able to have a point of engagement so that it steps into the breach, as it is always traditionally done, but does so with the kind of resources that remain authentic, have the integrity that's true to its mission, while at the same time using a lot of other things that are part of God's canvas to move people to where they need to be. Church alone can't do it. It's got to be integrated into a broader fabric in order to be effective.
Well, that's terrific. With my last question, I want to just go straight to Dr. King's legacy. Being involved in politics, I hear a lot of people speaking about it. It's used in advertising. It's used in a whole lot of different sectors. But Giovanni, you're on the ground. And I just would love to hear you speak to your perspective on what Dr. King's legacy is, what you think the lessons that we need to take from it, and how we need to apply that to our own lives. And I know you're a humble man and not one that will go on and pontificate, but I'm going to ask you to just give us your perspective, because I think it's something that we can learn from.
Well, the one word that I'm very present to is dream. And I'm concerned that many of our children and many of us adults aren't clear about what it means to dream. It's as if we go through life doing our thing, whatever our thing is, but what is the possibility for our greatest reason for being and waking up in the morning? Our children, I think, are losing the ability to dream, because I think many of us adults, as parents, as grandparents, as aunts, as uncles, we're not dreaming. And so when I think about dreams and what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. put before all of us, is to dream. We were all put here on this planet for a reason, right? But if we can't see it, if we can't envision it, a better individual, a better collective, we will never get there, and our children certainly won't get there. So again, what I'm most present to is this, the power of dream, right? And it's the greatest gift, I believe, that we can give our children. If our children don't know that they are incredibly, divinely created, nothing missing, nothing broken, right? Many of our children are receiving the opposite message, that they are broken, coming from broken homes. It's all in perspective, right? If I see myself as broken, less than, I've got a big hill to climb. But if I see myself as whole, complete, divinely created, the opportunities presented as challenges are just that, opportunities for me to see and manifest that which is already in me. So dream, dream, dream.
I think I will end it there. This was a terrific panel. It was comforting, and I'm excited that it was recognized, because I often don't recognize it when I participate in it, that you have a bunch of men up here talking about this, but I have to say, working for Valerie Jarrett and being a mentee of the First Lady, I'm a little uncomfortable that we haven't had women involved in this discussion. Luckily, panel 2 does. So let's give our panelists on panel 1 another round of applause. Let's get the second panel up here. And I really appreciate everybody joining us at the White House today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're just going to get repositioned here, so bear with us for just a second.
All right, I'm leaving, but make sure you show Aaron some love. She worked hard.
All right, I think, like Michael said, I think that first panel was a great discussion. I'm really looking forward to this next panel. And again, thank you to Michael for moderating the panel and for his passion and leadership on this topic. But we do have another special guest here who will be moderating the second panel. We're honored to be joined here by Adara Nicholson, who serves as the Chief of Program Operations for the Corporation of National Community Service. And I'll let her take it away.
Sure.
Adara?
Thank you. Well, thank you again for being here today, and I want to turn it over quickly to just dig into this panel so there's plenty of time to hear about the great work that they've done. First, I'll start with Todd. As you heard earlier, Todd is the president of Global Citizen. He's the founder and director of the Greater Philadelphia Martin Luther King Day of Service. So one of the things that you have worked so hard to do is to make the day, the holiday, not just one day, that it's really a 365 event. Can you speak to why you've had that vision and why that's been so important to you?
Sure. It actually started many years ago in a late-night conversation with an idea. In 1998, 2 years after the holiday was recognized as a federal day, I was working late one night in Governor Casey's administration with Harris Wofford. I was his aide. And Harris, of course, was on the front lines with Dr. King, and we talked about how ironic it was that so many people had fought and struggled for recognition of Dr. King in this way, and yet, 2 years later, for millions, particularly young people, it was just becoming a day of checking out, of sleeping late, going to the mall, watching a lot of TV, and Harris had the street cred to be able to say, Martin would be appalled if he knew that on this day that was set aside for him, that this was taking place, when in fact, Dr. King was a champion of action, an enemy of apathy. And so we brainstormed that night about what it would be like if people around the country, united of all ages and backgrounds, engaged in a community building experience of reflecting about Dr. King and his legacy and what he might be doing if he were alive, and defining the needs of the community as groups, as communities of faith, the public sector, the private sector, all across these ranges, and to say, how can I, one as an individual, respond and take my concerns about the community and turn them into action? One person who can make a difference, but together as an organization, and now, 17 years after we started, to see what harnessing the resources available in our society can do. You know, I think that, unfortunately, too many people see citizenship as ending in the voting booth. And we all have to realize that once you've handed over the responsibilities to a mayor or a senator or a president, that our responsibilities don't end there. And so we must harness the resources of the public sector and the private sector and communities of faith. And I can't think of anyone else in my lifetime who embodies that spirit of building broad coalitions, breaking down barriers, bringing together people who might not ever meet in a day of honoring him, of celebrating his legacy, that now has turned into a sustainable commitment 365 days of the year to civic engagement and community involvement.
Yeah. And I think David said on the first panel, I mean, what we're looking for people to be stakeholders in their communities. And so what you don't get from one day of service, from showing up for 2 hours, which is great. You know, you can fill that bag, you can write the card for the, you know, for the troop that's serving abroad, but about serving day to day, serving every day throughout the year, it really makes you a stakeholder in your community. And on that, I just want to turn to Erwin Pfizer, who, if we're talking about someone who has dedicated themselves to service here, abroad, one of the first African Americans in the Marines, which I think, if we could just give a round of applause for Mr. Pfizer and his service, for having to, you know, the service that you provided abroad and then to come back to a segregated United States and to continue your service here and now as a senior companion serving frail elderly in Maine in your community. Can you just speak to how your experiences, you know, either in the service or when you came back, how it has driven you to just continue throughout your life to be a servant for others?
Well, to quote the great lie, it was a barrel of fun. After service, we started in the service early, and it turned out it was some of the most difficult times in America. I won't bore you with the details because most of you are too young to remember, but there's a few of you who know what it was like, and you can appreciate what we did. However, being a little older, I got a chance to protect the mentor. I was in law enforcement in Chicago and was in communications because they say I spoke fairly well. And I had the things that you think you want: a house, a wife, children, you know, all of those little things. And what do I need? And I started to listen to Dr. King speak. And then I realized I had nothing. When you listen to Dr. King, one of the first things he would say, I got to know him very well. Yeah, he would say things like, we ain't where we want to be, but I'd hate to be where we were. And so as time went by, I found out while I was in law enforcement that they were arresting marchers and peaceful demonstrators. And the Constitution of the United States categorically states that if you demonstrate peacefully in this country, you have the right to be protected to march. And then the bulb went off. I'm in the wrong outfit. In the Chicago Police Department, there is a point where you can transfer to a unit called a Human Relations Section, and their duty is to protect you in the constitutional way, because someone had finally seen this, brought it to the forefront, and that's what we were about. So I immediately requested transfer to this organization. And when I did, I was investigated because I was taking a drop in pay. I would be doing something that was risky, and so on down the line. So finally, after that, when any organization was formed, whether it was SNCC Corps, or was Dr. King coming for open house marching and so on down the line, we were assigned to that. And it was one of the things that where I got to know him really well, because we went into some places that were particular hell. To give you just an example of how America was at that time, just one example. We were on a demonstration in a place called Bogan, a section of Chicago, for open house marching. And people were throwing rocks and stones and bricks and all kinds of other things. And I saw this one gentleman, middle-aged, throw something at the car and was picking up stuff and throwing it. So I pointed him out, picked him up, put him in the wagon. They arrested him, brought him to court the next day where I was to testify. You know what his lawyer's defense was? If he was convicted, he'd be denied citizenship to the United States. Anyway, so moving right along, I got to know Dr. King. I got to know Dr. King very well, and we had times before things started. We often had times to sit down and talk, and that was some of the most exhilarating things you ever want to know. The man was a philosopher. He had patience. He had love. He had feelings. He had a mission. He had a plan. And believe me, when I say I was protecting the mentor, I did. But I didn't do this alone. There were 23 other people in the unit. And whenever this came, our special job was to make sure that if you told us when you were going to arrive, where you were going to march, what the purpose of your march was, and you were going to do it peacefully, the Constitution was yours. And that's what we did. And from that, it moved on into other things. I did 10 years as a director of the Human Relations section in Park Forest, working with senior citizens for 10 years as on their advisory board. And then that was a lot, we accomplished a great deal. Then I moved into this organization called the Champions of Change, but it is not the Champions of Change. What's the organization? It's the
Senior Companion.
Senior Companion Program. And they said it would be simple and it would be easy. And I remember I got on in 08, and one of the first person they gave me was a gentleman. He was from Belize. He had been in the British Army. He was now one of our senior companions, and I noticed that something was kind of wrong, and so I went in and told Mr. Commodore Edmonds about it. We took him to a doctor, and he was about to die, and they put him in the hospital, stabilized him, and he's living today. Yeah, so they're so rewarding when you become a companion to do things to assist people. Some things are so relatively simple. It's conversation, it's to the doctor, it's to something that they want to do. Some ladies just like to shop. and you do these things, and when you do, the reward is tremendous. I heard this gentleman on the other panel speak about mentoring with kids. The community which we live in is so devoid of double families, father, mother, and so on down the line. Mentoring is a need that must be done by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. That was fantastic. So let me turn it over to Maureen. And Maureen is the director of the Campus Kitchens Project, which is a national program of the DC Central Kitchen. And what struck me also from the first panel is when someone said, you do something not just because it's the right thing to do, but at some point something impacted you to have you move in that direction. So can you tell us about your organization, but also just what drove you to the work, and talk about the important work that you do?
Sure. My organization is the Campus Kitchens Project, and we are the national program of DC Central Kitchen. And we operate on 31 colleges and high schools across the country doing food recovery, meal distribution, and empowerment programming. And that programming is nutrition education. We work in gardens. We work with farmers and farmers markets to increase the use of SNAP benefits. Basically, we're doing holistic programming to feed those people who are being underserved. every month, our students will recover about 50,000 pounds of food. And that really is a drop in the bucket of what goes to waste in the United States. One of the real big problems that we face across the country is this perception that there's just not enough food, which is completely incorrect. Most of the issues we deal with are access to food. And that really goes to the motivation that I have for doing the work I do, because I remember growing up being a child in New Windsor, New York, which is part of the larger Newburgh enlarged city area there, where we would work in my kitchen, in my house, with my grandmother and my mother to serve food. My grandmother was a big proponent of feeding people. We're Irish, we can't help it. You know, I remember her going through 20 pounds of potatoes a week, and always telling us that there was more than enough, not just for us, but for the multitude of family we would have over, and all of my cousins who would come over. And I distinctly remember going to the soup kitchen with my grandmother, and it was a church-based program. And you know, my mother used to tell us all the time, and that we were responsible for other people, that we were our brother's keeper, and she didn't mean my literal brother. You know, but my mother and my father, my grandmother, really instilled in us this idea that we are responsible to one another, that we are responsible for one another. And that's one of the things that we work very hard in working with students, is bringing them to this idea that you're not just serving someone, but that you're getting more out of it than probably the meal that you're giving someone, that we all rise together when we serve one another, and that if you are going to work in service, you have to come to it not expecting anything, not expecting any reward or any recognition, but you're doing that service because those people are your neighbors, and you are responsible to them as much as they are responsible to you.
And I appreciate that. And, you know, some would say, we heard earlier about, you know, creating pathways for folks across generations to serve. And so certainly at a college campus, you have, you know, ready participants, and you have bodies to do the work, but certainly, are they getting it? Do they understand why they're serving? Do they understand, you know, food access could be, you know, it's a social justice issue. It's about making a connection to the person that you're serving, and that's why you're there, aside from just, you know, learning what's in the book. So, you know, I sense the greater purpose of your organization, and the need for the students to not just show up again on that day, you know, to grab the food, fill the bag, but to take that with them, you know, throughout the rest of their lives.
And we find that with most of our students, our kitchens are started by students. It's not me coming into a community saying, hey, this is what you need to solve your problems. It's students looking for those opportunities and coming to me and saying, you have something I need, here's my community, how can we work together to help those people in the community with the resources that community has. And so, you know, we're not coming and saying we have all of the solutions to every problem you have. We have a solution for some people.
Yeah.
But the longevity of any program really does depend on the students, on the administration of a particular campus, and on community members seeing the value of doing that service, seeing the value of putting that food that would otherwise go to waste back into the community, seeing the value of taking it one step further and not just feeding today, but really helping empower the students to become the leaders of tomorrow and people to help themselves. And that's our end goal, really, when we go into a community.
Great. Now, Rachel knows, I know a little bit about the program that you served in. You were AmeriCorps Vista.
Yep, that was my second term of service.
That was your
with
second term of service,
Bernadette
which,
Todd.
just plug, is a program of the Corporation for National Community Service. And so you've been on both sides of it. So you served as a Vista, which has a direct anti-poverty mission, and now you work with Todd, working, you know, again, to create one of the largest MLK Day days of service in the country in the greater Philadelphia area. Talk about why you chose Vista. Talk about why you chose to be of service, you know, from a young age on, and you continue you continue in that work. So just talk about your experience and why your new work remains important.
Sure. So actually, right before I did my term of Vista at Global Citizen, where I met Todd, I was also an AmeriCorps National member at Youth Build Charter School. So, that of course based in North Philadelphia. I'm originally from Central Pennsylvania. Moved to Philadelphia to attend Temple University. Had a very transformational experience, kind of like David's. When I was a student at Temple, I was robbed by a group of young men who couldn't have been any older than, at the time, my brother, who was about 15 years of age. And I was my heart just broke. And afterwards, I cried, and not that, because of the experience, but the fact that there's this group of young men throwing their lives away at 15. And I just, from that moment on, something snapped. And I said, this is not right. We need to stand up. We need to come together and work together to help these young people realize just sort of the mountains of potential that they have. And so the AmeriCorps program, working at Youth Build Charter School with students that had previously dropped out of Philadelphia public schools, I saw how the AmeriCorps program helped them transform their lives. All the students at Youth Build are part-time AmeriCorps members, and the AmeriCorps program really is a program that can achieve maximum results on minimum resources. I watched over 80-some, college, formerly high school dropouts walk across that stage, graduate not only with a high school diploma, but also a vocational certification, and I said, you know what, this is for me. I want to be the guy that can build the program, or rather give the avenue of empowerment to these young people. And so I got very lucky. The following year was able to work with Todd as an AmeriCorps Vista on the King Day of Service. And it's been an amazing journey being able to see, specifically on King Day of Service, how we can bring people of all backgrounds together to help meet needs of different communities. And really harness the power of people, because I believe that service, again, is an avenue of empowerment. It not only empowers the person that is sort of doing service, but it empowers the whole community. And so, and again, the AmeriCorps program has been quite amazing, and through my experiences has only made me want to do this even more and more and more. So,
great. Now, Todd, can you speak to, so everyone is on this panel, and the panel before has been honored with being a champion of change. And we read the tagline in the back, it says, winning the future. What do those two things mean to you, being a champion of change and also winning the future?
Well, I think that, as I said, right now we're in a economic situation where there are millions of people who are out of work. It's nice that the labor statistics of the last week showed that unemployment is down to about, I believe, 8.6%, and a lot of those people, of course, are not reported. But I think that, it reminds me of what Dr. King said less than a week before he died at the National Cathedral in Washington. He was referring to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that without a job, one does not have life, nor liberty, nor the pursuit of happiness. One merely exists. And whether it's an older citizen or a young person who has gone astray because they have not discovered the power that they have, they've not been empowered. I mean, one of the reasons that we do the King Day of Service, particularly focused on young people, is for them to discover that instead of engaging in activity that is negative, that there is that opportunity, and through service learning, which I think is incredibly important and something that the Corporation for National and Community Service pushes and advocates very much. But I think that we're losing among young people because unless we teach them at the earliest of ages that not only do they have a responsibility to get good grades, but that citizenship of using the experiences in the classroom and taking that into the community is something that is not only a positive thing, but it's something that will empower them. It will provide them with the tools to be successful and succeed in life. And I saw it when I was in 10th grade after the hurricane of 1973, Hurricane Agnes, and the effects that it had in eastern Pennsylvania. And we as a class, a 10th grade class, found ourselves in a sweaty bus going to someplace I really don't think I knew what we were doing. And then this transformative experience for me was to be in a place literally knee-deep in mud, standing next to people I didn't know, didn't think I had anything in common with, and finding that together, collectively, we do have the power to make that difference. And I think the key, frankly, is being asked to do that. And whether it goes back to Dr. King and the example that he set in not just identifying the inequities and the injustices of society, but then calling on people to serve, whether it was in Montgomery or whether it was in the '63 March for Jobs and Freedom or the Poor People's Campaign. It was what President Kennedy did in 1961 in forming the Peace Corps. He asked people to serve. And I think we're a compassionate nation, whether it's September 11th, 2001, or a natural disaster. People want to be served, having the opportunity to serve, but we have to do a better job of providing the resources to do that. And I think that many in the administration and in a bipartisan way have tried to create the opportunity for that, whether it's in AmeriCorps to expand from 75,000 to 250,000 through the Edward N. Kennedy Serve America Act. But I think that we're going to lose this battle on the home front if we don't provide those resources for us to come together. And it's really, I think we have to begin to look at it more as an act of patriotism and not just see fighting in wars and on foreign soil, but we have so many battles on the home front, fighting illiteracy and substandard housing and racism, that is a true act of patriotism. The millions that will serve on Monday, the 85,000 in the Philadelphia area, along with, we're privileged to be joined on Monday by Vice President Biden and Dr. Biden. Those are the folks who are setting example that can serve as that proverbial springboard that is absolutely necessary to winning the future.
Right. And of course, key to that is, like you said, is motivating the next generation to serve and making it important to them, having them understand how it's important to them, how it can change their life and how it can change their community. And certainly, Mr. Pfizer, you have so much wisdom and experience around this work and what you've had, the experiences that you've had. Can you speak to how you think we can motivate this generation, this younger generation, to serve and be part of their community when we've heard about the obstacles that many of them are facing, coming from broken homes, living in distressed communities, having financial insecurity, having emotional insecurity? How can we motivate them to serve? How can we have them see the world outside of themselves?
Well, I think that if we stop going and everyone get involved, no matter how little experience or whatever you have, whether it's cooking skills or mothering skills, you can do something, but you gotta get up off the couch and do it. Get out there and find that person or persons or organization and get it done. It gives you so much back. You feel so rewarded. Right now, I have a part-time job as a crossing guard. And I watch kids go across the streets in the morning. And you can read from every one of those kids what their background is like, how they're dressed, their mannerisms, how they speak, the different things they do. I have seen kids lose their backpack. And I've had things from CETA, something like that, where it's a temporary backpack. I said, ask your mother and your mom or whoever at home if you can have this. Never do it. You know what I mean? This is not the day where you want to do that. And they'll come back and say, yes, my mom said I could have it. They got a temporary bag. and then suddenly the old bag is gone. Nobody said thanks. I don't care. The idea was they had a bag to carry the books till they got another one. And it's that simple. If I sound like I'm oversimplifying it, maybe I am. But you can do things, and when you do, you'll be well rewarded, and your community will move in advance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to this panel for sharing your experiences, and I congratulate you again on this honor. So can we just give a round of applause to the second panel?
Thank you, Adara, and thank you again to the second panel and to our first panel of champions. Both great discussions. And now we have two final speakers who are here today to help close out the event. But I just wanted to remind everyone, both here and watching at home, to learn more about the champions you heard today, you can go to www.whitehouse.gov/champions. But we're honored now to be joined by Jonathan Greenblatt, the Director of the White House Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation, and Joshua Dubois, the Director of the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. Jonathan and Joshua?
Well, hello, friends. Again, my name is Joshua Dubois, and I'm Director of the Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships here in the White House. And on behalf of the President and the entire administration, I want to offer another word of congratulations to our wonderful champions. Let's give them another round of applause. Because of you, so many individuals and families and communities around the country are really happier and healthier and more whole. And that is what President Obama envisions when he thinks about folks doing service. And I really want to deeply appreciate your tremendous work. In addition to the Champions of Change acknowledgement, there's another award that we actually want to present you with now. That's a special award for President Obama, and one that's particularly focused on Dr. King and his legacy. The President developed an award called the MLK Drum Majors for Service Award to acknowledge everyday folks around the country who are doing tremendous work but often go unacknowledged. We piloted this last year but really launched it this year, and on this Martin Luther King holiday, over 2,000 folks around the country will receive a Drum Majors for Service Award. But you all are the first ones in the entire country to receive your award. So in addition to acknowledging them as champions of change, they are also the first in the nation MLK Drum Majors for Service. You know, I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and my grandmother, Catherine Russell, was an active participant in the sit-ins in Nashville in the earliest days of the Civil Rights Movement, and she used to regale me with stories of that. And one of the honors of my life has been spending a tremendous amount of time with my mentors and friends, Dr. C.T. Vivian and Dr. Joseph Lowery. And so, although I don't have personal experience with the movement, I can safely say that your work truly embodies Dr. King's legacy, and I want to appreciate that. Jonathan Greenblatt is the head of the Office of Social Innovation and Civic Participation, and really leads the administration's work on service and has helped to shepherd the MLK Drum Majors for Service Award forward. And he's going to offer some remarks as well.
Thank you, Joshua. And I once again want to congratulate and also thank all of you for being here today as our Champions of Change. As Joshua said, the Champions of Change really celebrate what we think is best about the country, which is the ability for ordinary people, average citizens, no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, to make a difference and to create change and to strengthen communities through service. Service has been a big focus for the President. All of you know he started out as a community organizer, and to this day he has put a high premium for all of us inside the White House and across the administration to look at the ways that we can use service to strengthen our communities and to really expand opportunity. It's of the highest priority for all of us, and so on behalf of the President and everyone here at the White House, I once again want to thank you for the remarkable work that you do and how you represent what we think is the highest ideal of service. Really, again, is personified by the Drum Majors Award. So we're just so thrilled to have you be the first recipients of that inaugural program here today. I also want to thank all of you. You know, the Champions of Change program is about bringing people from all over the country here to hear about what we're doing in the White House, but also to really learn from you, to honor the work and accomplishments of so many folks, and to learn more about the activities that are taking place at the local level, because the President deeply believes that our work is really about elevating community solutions. You can't find the answers here in Washington. They're not going to be contrived in a cubicle or fought out in a focus group. In actuality, they're taking place on the ground in cities and towns, in schools and churches, in playgrounds and in family rooms all over the country. And you guys all exemplify that. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. And hopefully this is the start of a much longer conversation. We really look forward to that.
And we just want to show you the Drum Majors Award. It's actually an award and a letter from the president and a lapel pin and some other things that you will be able to take home and show across your community. So we'll be getting those to you very shortly.
Right over here.
Actually, right over here.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Have
all.
a wonderful afternoon.
All right, take care.